This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity Podcast. Today's discussion is the 5 best business decisions I've ever made. And again, we could talk about the 5 best, and we should probably do a different podcast on some of the worst ones I've ever made because there's been a bunch of those, and many of those are doozies. I will also make the special offer today. Anybody that texts me first, 773-766-5322 in response to this podcast, and as a comment, good, bad, ugly, I don't care. You have to be the first person to text. You can't be the person that always texts to get the $100 gift certificate. I'll send you a $100 Amazon gift certificate. Amazon's the subject of a different podcast today, which is Back to the Basics Plus, which is a discussion of Goldman Back to the Basics, Amazon doing so well through its Amazon Web Services, the Basics Plus, and some of these other chains not doing so well, Rite Aid and others that sort of stuck to the basics too much. But Back to the Basics Plus is the topic of that podcast. Anyway, today's discussion is my 5 best business decisions. I'll start with one, which was a really interesting one in my 20s. I had started as a young lawyer at a huge law firm, and this was a brutal sort of life for a few years. I learned a lot. Going to that big law firm is not what I would call a great decision. It was fine. I learned a ton. But the great decision was the next law firm I went to was a place where I had people that I knew that all liked it, which is you're a young lawyer at a huge firm. You might realize how unusual this is, but I had 3 different friends at that firm that were enjoying their experience there. And the business decision or the career decision was, if you pick a place where the environment works for you, where you like it, where you could live your life and not be so overwhelmed, then your creativity and your instincts can flourish again. I always figure if I'm in the right place, I could then thrive. Whereas if I push myself into the wrong place, even if it's a prestigious place, no good, no bueno, not a lot of wins that come out of that. So the first decision was choosing that second job at a place, second real professional job at a place where it seemed like I would be happy, and if I was happy, I could figure out how to thrive, and my creativity would flourish. And depending what days it is, it either does or doesn't. But that was ultimately a great business decision myself, and it wasn't a monetary win. It wasn't any other kind of win, but it put me in the right platform to thrive for the long run. And quite frankly, I'm still at that firm 30 years later. That firm was Rust and Hardy. We merged into McGuire Woods 20 years ago, and been at the same place ever since. And it's just been a great platform. But putting yourself in the right sort of place where you're happy and where life works for you opens up so many other creative opportunities and chances. That's the first concept. The second concept is, and the 2 core businesses I've been in my career, and those are in the law business and in the media business, what I did come to early on was this concept of doubling down on great people. When you find great people, you have to sort of grab them, embrace them, overpay them, treat them like kings and queens because they are. They're everything towards building a great business. And so really doubling down around great people, great teammates, great colleagues, whether at Becker's Healthcare, people like Jessica Cole and Katie Atwood and a handful of others, Mike Gamble, Laura Derda, and many others. At McGuire Woods, people like Amber Walsh, Holly Buckley, Bart Walker, Gretchen Townsend, Melissa Sabad, and just a whole number of people, Jeff Cockle, that when you have great people with you, Holly Buckley, if we didn't mention it already, David Pivnik, it just is making sure you just embrace them and take care of them and have them thrive and you thrive and the business will thrive. And that's the way to look at things. I got great advice on building teams early on from a lawyer named Jerry Peters at Latham, just a brilliant person who said, look, if you want to build anything substantial, you got to build great teams. And I think that's everything, and embracing and doubling down on great people. The third thing I talk about is a great business decision. And many of these won't be sort of your traditional business decisions of, oh my God, I invested in this, I invested in that. We've had some of those that have gone great. They've come to me over times, I've seen them over times, and it's gone great. But that's not really, those are more, that's different than how I view these things, which are attitudinal things in some ways. The third great decision was changing my attitude. As a young lawyer 30 years ago, the style was to yell at people when they didn't get things done. And this would have short-term benefits, just like maybe yelling at your children has short-term benefits. In the long run, it does nothing for fostering attitudes, fostering teams, and so forth. So making that effort to change my attitude, to learn to embrace people if they're 83% right, if they're 90% great, if they're 90% great, embrace them and love them and look past the negative things. You've talked about the negative things, but you really want to focus on here's what's great about these people. Here's what's great about them for part of your team. Here's what we're trying to do for the long run, and to really view it that way. The fourth thing that we talk about often is allocating your investments, and this is a concept of looking at things in your allocation of investments, not so much in a way that stock market pundits tell you to look at them or that investment managers tell you to look at them, but ultimately in an investment and allocation that allows you to do well and sleep at night. You don't have to hit over-the-top returns. You got to hit the right returns that work for you and that allow you to sleep at night. So for me, that means a heavy balance of treasuries to index funds versus trying to do everything, trying to have everything in equities. And then when things go badly, losing 30% of my portfolio and feeling I want to jump out a window. Trying to avoid that type of investing and finding an allocation that really works for me. The fifth decision and thing that we look at, and again, I'm an incremental thinker by nature, is as I start to see things, start to understand them, being willing to double down on the niches and the areas that I'm in and trying to really understand them. And we were able to do that in the healthcare legal business, we were able to do that in the healthcare media business, and ultimately just, basically at some point starting to see this is what's working, this is what's going well, looking for patterns and doubling down on those things. So these are what I look at as my 5 best business decisions. And again, there's been plenty of bad ones. I invested in bond funds at some point. That was a disaster. As interest rates rose and the value of bond funds went down permanently. I mean, there's a lot of bad decisions we've made early on investing in tech and being all in on tech and finding that was a disaster when the tech boom sort of faded in the early 2000s. And so we've had plenty of bad decisions as well. But some of the good ones are these. And some of them are more attitudinal than they are actually, okay, I invested in that. I did a lot of investing in surgery centers and that was going well. Did a lot of investing in some other stuff. Made the mistake of getting out of some great real estate investments too early. But at the end of the day, 5 of the things we're most thrilled about are doubling down on great people, picking a place to work that you love and are comfortable at, and then ultimately you'll figure out a way to thrive. Changing my attitude and how I dealt with people and managed people, so important. Doubling down on niches and areas when I started to see winning opportunities. And finally, 5th, learning how to allocate assets so I could sleep at night for good times and bad times. And that's so important to long-term investing. In any event, thank you for listening to this Becker Private Equity Podcast. As always, feel free to text me, 773-766-5322 with any ideas. And again, as I said at the top of the hour, if you're the first person to listen to this and send me a text about it, and you're not somebody that claims the gift all the time, we'll send you a $100 Amazon gift certificate. And again, Amazon, a great example of both back to the basics plus doubling down on other areas as well and testing other areas. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity Podcast, and keep on doubling down on what's working for you and your great people. Thank you for listening.